It's so funny you bring up the example of Warby, a DTC, an online brand. They're like, "We're gonna have a brick and mortar store," because I had the same reaction when I was living in the Seaport in Boston, where Away Suitcases had a big store there. In the back of my head, like, as a CFO, I'm like, "How could this possibly be viable to pay for this real estate to sell the suitcases out of?" And I'm just having the aha moment in my head that it was actually an advertising opportunity for people walking home from work thinking about, "I'm gonna go on a business trip next week and my luggage stinks."
Yeah, 100% CJ. I mean, the quantitative sort of finance guy in you too is like, you also have to make sure you don't have too many of these things and they're not too expensive to run. But there is a point at which having them when there's that advertising benefit and it's driving e-commerce, where that's material. You still need to make sure they run efficiently and everything else. And I know it was in the news recently, I guess, with Allbirds, right, which was a brand that people really genuinely loved a decade ago. And I don't know whether this is true or not, but the opening of sort of too many stores maybe was part of the undoing. So you still need to be judicious with it. But I think there are real benefits of having physical stores when you're an e-commerce brand.
On the Warby point, you were early to the game on that. Maybe you could tell the story about discovery there. And what I'm really interested in is if there was a metric that you saw and you were like, "Oh, wow."
So that started, I was teaching at Penn back in those days, and I was teaching the basically the intro to marketing. Funnily enough, there was no course or anything on like digital marketing and e-commerce. Like nobody was really studying it. And thanks to Mark Law, and I'd been an early investor in diapers.com, not when he was a student, but I'd sort of worked on that, sort of analyzed the data, and I'd showed this stuff at class. It was really cool, CJ. You have a map of the US, and I put all these little dots where they currently had customers, right? So it's like in April, and the next map comes up, and it's May, and you see more dots appear, and you do it quickly, and you kind of see how this thing's sort of spreading. And the reason I was showing this to the students is you could detect using some statistics is that when you get customers in a certain location, you can kind of double down and get more there. And part of it's because like I might see you wearing Warby or whatever, that's one of it, or the box that says diapers.com. But the other reason is if you and I are next door neighbors, we're probably quite similar in a number of regards, right? Similar size house, probably similar demographics, similar income. So because of this birds of a feather flock together thing, you get this effect. So I kind of show this stuff, and then these four guys show up in office hours. I think the only one that wasn't in my class was Andy Hunt. He was in someone else's core class, and they came in and said, "Oh, this e-commerce stuff is interesting," thinking of starting its brand. And I said, "What are you going to do?" "Oh, we're going to sell glasses on the internet." And so I'm sitting there thinking to myself, I don't think this can be a very good idea. I don't wear glasses, but I wear sunglasses. Don't you want to touch and feel them? So that the term that a prof at Harvard came up with is they called it a non-digital attribute, meaning there's something about a product. It's very hard to communicate it purely through the internet. And I forget which of the guys said it, but they said, "Oh, no, we've thought about that. We're going to do this thing called home try, and we're going to send CJ a box. We're going to figure out how many will be in the box, and that's how we'll get around it." I went from kind of thinking, I don't know if this would really work, to actually when they started to really unpack that there was this big monolith behind that whole industry, right, that owned the distribution, owned the brands, owned the franchising, did the manufacturing. And you and I have no idea when we buy Gucci sunglasses in, the Sunglass Hut or whatever, that there's kind of one entity almost pulling the strings. Like once that was unpacked, then I started to become a bit of a believer. I said, well, this is really interesting. And you might remember, if you saw it back in the day, there's really good messaging on the website where there was a bar chart, like ours cost this, theirs cost this, theirs is this in the store. So they really used it to their advantage to kind of hammer home the point that people were being ripped off.
On the surface, you think glasses, that's a personal thing. And in as many digital things as I've seen that try to like put them on your face, they always look still kind of off, but it works. And you would probably think the same thing to a degree with like Zappos in shoes. I'm guessing their return rate is still pretty high, but I guess there's some kernel of truth there where we overestimate how personalized people think these things are, or are better at picking them at first glance than you would believe.
The interesting thing that we discovered doing some research with that Triumph program, CJ, is let's imagine the conversion rate, let's call it 50%, might be a bit higher than that by now, but let's say it's 50. So you might say, well, I send a box out to someone, it costs $15 to do the two-way shipping, my price point's $95. If they don't buy anything, have I wasted kind of $15? And one of my colleagues and I did this study where we figured out that actually the word of mouth value of just like throwing that into the home and having other people see it actually made up for the $15. And if you could also like nudge people, like I used to get a lot of my e-commerce stuff because I lived in Philly, your stuff gets stolen. So I would get my stuff shipped to the office. But the good thing about that is the box would be sitting there, right, in my mailbox. And if I happen to get a home try on from Warby, you open them up and you're having lunch. And so there's just more incidental exposure happens because of that. So once they put a store in a particular location, if you're a guy who, feels you can understand the product completely through the internet, you just buy online. If you're someone who wants to touch and feel, you're either going to do home try on or you're going to walk into that store at the seaport. When the store's there, if you're a guy that wants to try on 50, you funnel off to the store. So the people that get left doing the, 5 in a box, they have a much better fit to it when there's a store. And so the conversion goes up when the store is there. If there's no store, then unfortunately that dude, wants to try 50, he might order 10 home try-ons and really sort of hose your economics. The presence of a physical store improves the efficiency of the other two channels and improves demand overall.
That just put my brain in a pretzel, but it makes so much sense because you want to meet the consumer where they want to transact.
Exactly.
Where do consumer founders still get unit economics dangerously wrong today? We threw around a couple of things there where like, what's the cost to make this, especially if it's a multi-tiered distribution, and then even the costs around sending something in the mail physically.
Yeah, I think there's sort of three things that you struggle with, right? So one might be if it's a product that's got any kind of repeat cadence to it, you're kind of overly optimistic about the chance with which that happens. And it turns out that your repeat rate is not 40%, but it's only 20, so that could be a problem. Number two, you might have acquired some of those customers by doing sort of brand dilutive things like, offering people discounts, offering people free shipping, other kinds of things that kind of get the wrong people into the funnel. And then thirdly, I think you said something interesting earlier about metrics. I think younger generation, obviously like me, I'm in the Xer, the Xer generation. A lot of people who are younger have kind of grown up with marketing where they think it's digital marketing. And they think that digital marketing's better because you can measure it. You drop this much money into Meta, this is what happened. This is the implied effectiveness of that. And that sort of might be true, but it also might be kind of a false metric. Like if you had done some awesome activation down in the park in Battery Park, that could be way better. Or if you dropped your product into a channel that people hadn't thought about. So I'll give you an example. There's a fellow I was chatting with a couple of weeks ago, and he's got this kind of cool shoe product, and it's a big chunky shoe for the all-American guy. Okay, it's called Stokes. I'll give him a shout out. So, and his thesis is there's a certain class of guy that doesn't want the on-runner and the fancy thing and the slender and all the bells and whistles. He's just a big dude. He wants a beer after work, and he wants shoes that are either wide or wider. So the marketing's like really funny. One of the hacks that they've been pursuing is instead of throwing that thing immediately into Foot Locker, they have D2C obviously, but Foot Locker, you got to somehow get the message across that you're different from the other 100 things, right? But what if you just dropped it in, I forget the kind of store, but we'll go with this, like a trucker supply store. There's like 400 of these in the Midwest, and the trucker guy goes in to buy other stuff, and he's, oh my God, look at these shoes. And then what you've done is you put a customer in front of like a binary decision. Oh, do I want this or not, right? And it was a little bit of the same story with Touchland. When that thing started showing up in like a Sephora or an Ulta, that kind of tells the customer, oh, this is a beauty product, right? The third piece of the answer is it sometimes prevents people from thinking more creatively about other levers that are much more effective, be they sort of forms of PR or especially I think around distribution. I think over and over again, innovating on distribution often yields outsized returns.
Can you say more about that, innovating on distribution? I love that phrase.
There's sort of the 4 Ps of marketing, right? It was cooked up by this guy, Philip Kotler. I mean, that book that he's marketing management, Kotler and Keller, it was around when I was an undergrad in New Zealand. I think it's the biggest selling marketing text in the world. And the 4 Ps are the 4 levers, right? You have a product, a price, a promotional strategy, and a place. And if you think about the order of effectiveness, let's say you and I are competing, and I decide for some crazy reason to drop the price, well, you can do that in an instant, and then we might actually both be worse off, right? So that's the first one. The second one is I come up with like, just do it. And you're over there at Adidas. You're, oh my God, those Nike guys, damn it. And then, eventually you come up with some other slogan and the benefit goes away. And then the third thing is I come up with some like really cool new way to make the shoe. It's got more bounce. It takes you 6 months to figure that out, right? But distribution, this is based on academic research. If you innovate on distribution or you crowd out the distribution channel, like the returns from that can be really long-lived. And it can be like real dramatic ones, like Blockbuster got screwed where Netflix used to mail you DVDs in the mail, right? And when you turn a hard good into a soft good, that can sort of wipe out the people who are selling the hard goods in physical space. or if you, put your product into a channel that no one else has really thought about. You'd sell no units of Purell in Sephora. It's not that Purell is a bad product, but no one's going to buy it there, right? But first of all, it's not even going to get in there. But when Touchland goes into Sephora, that's a very different kind of advantage.
One more thing about SpendHound. Teams using SpendHound reduce software spend by up to 30%. Here's how that actually happens. First, you get the data. Real pricing benchmarks from over 1,000 companies across 10,000 SaaS and AI vendors. When a renewal comes up, you know what fair pricing is and what you should be pushing for. But knowing the number and getting the number are two different things. SpendHound also includes on-demand procurement specialists who help with negotiation strategy, contract review, and renewal emails. You stop overpaying for the tools you need. You cut redundant tools before they renew. And you negotiate from a position of strength now that you have both the market data and expert support behind you. SpendHound is built by the team behind Yipit Data. It's rated #1 on G2 in SaaS spend management. And did we mention it's free forever for SMB? When we say free, we actually mean it. You can keep all the savings. Plus, it's only $10,000 per year for enterprise with $150,000 in savings guaranteed. There's a reason we're growing more than 100% year over year. Do you want to stop overspending on SaaS? Then go to spendhound.com/CJ. Zero risk, guaranteed savings. That's spendhound.com/CJ.